her latest husband's Brooks Brothers suit. Her baby girl had been killed by a garbage truck. How horrifying. Only 32 and now gone. What a waste of a beautiful woman and a beautiful life. At least that husband of hers had seen to it that she looked good, although really, the white boucle was so last season. Cecilia glanced over her shoulder at her son-in-law and granddaughter. The poor girl clung to her daddy and buried her face in his tailored black suit. Cecilia had never liked Zachary Zemaitis, had never understood why Devon had been so set on having him. Lord knew he was handsome, but he was just so male, with his big arms and shoulders and chest, and Cecilia had always been uncomfortable around men with 100-proof testosterone flowing through their veins. A garbage truck. Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. Zach Zemaitis sat in the front pew with his arm around his 10-year-old daughter. Devon would have hated that, and wherever she was, Zach was sure his wife was raising hell. A garbage truck? Devon Hamilton Zemaitis complained to the dead guy behind her in line. He was bad-mannered enough to roll his eyes. "Lady, we all have problems," he said. From what Devon could see, the man's biggest problem was that his family had buried him in a cheap suit. Probably J.C. Penney. Devon shuddered delicately. At least Zach had sent her to heaven in her Chanel and her best pearls, although the boucle was so last season, and she was missing her matching two-toned pumps. She looked down at her bare feet, covered by white, wispy clouds. She hoped to God Zach didn't donate her things to the Junior League auction, or it was likely Genevieve Brooks would end up with the Chanel pumps. Genevieve had been jealous of Devon since their first Little Miss Sparkle pageant, and Devon hated the thought of Genevieve forcing her big, bony feet inside those beautiful shoes. Without taking a step, Devon moved forward in line. It was an odd sensation, moving about as if she stood on some invisible conveyor belt. But then, being dead was odd. One moment she'd been speeding home to have it out with Zach, and the next she'd been sucked up by a white light and landed in a place without walls or substance. She thought maybe she'd been in line for an hour, maybe 2, but that couldn't be right. On a subconscious level, she knew there'd been a funeral, and she had been buried in her white suit. 4 or 5 days must have passed since the accident, but how was that possible? She thought of her little girl and got a weird feeling in her chest. It wasn't really an ache, like when she'd been alive. It was more like a nice, warm tingle that was filled with love and longing. What would become of her poor little Tiffany? Zach was a good father when he was home, which wasn't often, and a girl needed her mother. She moved once more and stood before a towering white desk in front of a pair of massive golden gates. "Finally," she said through a sigh. "Devon Zemaitis?" The man behind the desk spoke without opening his mouth or looking up from the scroll before him. "Devon Hamilton Zemaitis," she corrected him. He finally glanced up, and the white, wispy clouds reflected in his blue eyes. Without expression, he waved a hand, and an older woman appeared. She wore a severe bun and a lavender suit with gold buttons. "Mrs. Highbanger?" "Highbarger," her 6th-grade teacher corrected. "When did you die?" 5 years ago in man's time, but one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day." Devon felt like she was in school again, listening to Mrs. Highbarger rattle on about fractions. "Huh? God does not mark the days as man on earth." Oh. She guessed that explained why it felt like she'd been dead about an hour. "So, are you here to take me to heaven?" she asked, all prepared for her meeting with God. She had a few things she wanted to ask him.